Everyone knows the stock market crashed in 1929, but almost nobody knows that Joseph Kennedy, JFK's father, sold his entire portfolio exactly 47 days before Black Tuesday. How did he know? He didn't have a crystal ball. He had a signal that just flashed again in January 2026. Most people look at a market crash as an act of God, something unpredictable and unavoidable, like an earthquake or a hurricane. But as a historian of wealth, I can tell you that is false. Crashes are man-made. They follow a specific mechanical script. And if you know how to read the script, you stop being a victim and you start being a predator. In the next 30 minutes, we're going to do something that has never been done on this channel before. We're going to conduct a forensic autopsy of the greatest trade in American history. We're going to deconstruct the exact moves Joseph Kennedy made in the summer of 1929. We're going to look at the shoeshine indicator, the margin debt trap, the pool operations, and the psychology of the exit. And then we're going to take that historical template and layer it directly over our current economy in January 2026. I am going to prove to you that the exact same setup is happening right now, down to the very week. This is not about fear-mongering. This is about financial survival. This is about the greatest wealth transfer in human history, which is happening right under your nose. If you are watching this, you have a chance to be on the receiving end of that transfer. But only if you understand the Kennedy strategy. To understand the genius of Kennedy's move, you first have to understand the madness of the world he was living in. You have to understand the atmosphere of 1929. It is easy for us to look back at black and white photos of people in top hats and think they were naive. But the investors of the 1920s were just like us. They were living through a technological revolution that felt like magic. Imagine a world where, suddenly, you could hear voices from across the country in your living room through a box called a radio. Imagine a world where you could travel at speeds previously impossible because of the automobile. Imagine a world where electricity was lighting up cities that had been dark for thousands of years. The Roaring Twenties wasn't just a party, it was an economic explosion. Productivity was soaring. And because of this, the stock market became the national religion. In the past, stocks were for the elite. They were for the Rockefellers and the Morgans. But in the 1920s, the stock market went mainstream. It was the first era of the retail investor. The barber, the taxi driver, the cook, and the school teacher were all playing the market. There was a palpable sense of a new era. This is a phrase you need to remember. The new era. Leading economists, specifically a man named Irving Fisher, preached that the old cycles of boom and bust were dead. He believed that technology and the Federal Reserve had solved the problem of recessions. He famously proclaimed just weeks before the collapse that stock prices have reached what looks like a permanently high plateau. People believed him. Why wouldn't they? The market had been going up for 8 straight years. If you bought RCA, the Radio Corporation of America, you saw gains of 500%, then 1,000%. It felt like free money. It felt like the party would never end. And right in the center of this mania stood Joseph P. Kennedy. Joe Kennedy was not a nice man. He was a bootlegger during Prohibition, a movie mogul, and a banker. He was a shark. He understood that the stock market wasn't a mechanism for funding companies. It was a mechanism for taking money from the impatient and giving it to the patient. Kennedy was part of what they called pool operators. In the 1920s, market manipulation wasn't just common, it was legal. A group of wealthy men would pool their money together to buy a specific stock. They would trade it back and forth among themselves to create fake volume and drive the price up. Then, once the public noticed the rising price and jumped in to buy, the pool operators would dump their shares on the unsuspecting retail investors and walk away with millions. Kennedy knew the game was rigged because he was one of the people rigging it. He knew that the valuations of these companies had nothing to do with their profits. RCA didn't pay a dividend. It was a speculative bubble fueled by hype. But even a manipulator like Kennedy can get caught in a crash. To survive, he needed to know when the music was going to stop. He needed a signal that signaled the absolute top.